Good morning, Louisiana. This is Attorney General Jeff Landry, guest hosting for Moon Griffon, who is on vacation. Maybe he's listening. I don't know. What you think, Brandon?
I don't know. I think Moon may be checking in before he heads on out for the big trip to Alaska.
Well, I'm joined today in studio with our Chief Deputy, Bill Stiles. In fact, you remember a year, 2 years ago?
Yeah, it was a couple years ago now, actually.
And then we had then candidate Donald Trump, who's now the president.
Yes, sir.
Well, we got a great lineup today. Great lineup. Mm-hmm. We got Congressman Clay Higgins, Katie Arrington, who is the congressional candidate in South Carolina who defeated Mark Sanford. That was Donald Trump's candidate. Thought we'd bring her, give it a little Louisiana flair.
Yeah.
We got Daryl Purpera, who is the Louisiana legislative auditor. Mick Mulvaney, the OMB director and head of, it used to be the CFPB. They renamed it. I don't know. They gave it its rename. I don't remember. Bill, you remember what do they call it now? It's not
a board that everybody wants to get rid of.
It's the Bureau now. The Bureau, right.
Get rid of.
Pastor Tom Shepard. We're going to be talking about cybersecurity and basically parental controls on iPhones and, schools getting ready to come into session in about, another 45 days or so. And then we're going to cap it off with the real Attorney General, right? The Attorney General, Jeff Sessions. So it's going to be great. It's going to be a great show today. And we hope everybody stays in for the full 2 hours. What you think, Bill?
I think we got a bunch of great people calling in on the Hickson Hazard hotline is what I think. But I guess we need to make a disclaimer. I'm looking up at the wall here and I see AP Sports Program award to Brandon Como for outstanding first place job he did in broadcasting high school football. And I know he doesn't toot his own horn. So congratulations on that, Brandon.
Thank you all so much.
And I guess I'm going to give us a disclaimer because unlike Brandon, we are not professionals. So if we mess this up a little bit, just bear with us.
Absolutely. It may be painful for some. Have you ever had Dallas call in on the Hickson hotline?
He's never actually called in on his own hotline.
Man, we might have to. I might have to do that. I mean, if I had a hotline, I'd use it.
Yeah, for real. I mean, he's been in the studio, but he's never actually called in on his own hotline before.
And Brandon, he's not telling the full truth. He does have a hotline. He does use it often. It's my phone number.
Yeah.
So
that's about the only one in Baton Rouge that returns my calls. Right?
Yeah.
It's the ones that work with you. So man, it's a great day. We got a lot of great things going on. I can tell you, just kind of, walked in this morning, opened up Drudge, and there's the president, just kind of calling NATO out.
Yeah.
Is that unbelievable?
Yeah, Jeff, that's something that's been going on, as he mentioned, quite some time. NATO has not always spent what they were supposed to be spending on their military services, and that's all been subsidized basically by the United States of America and the taxpayers of the United States of America now for probably 20 or 30 years. And I guess there's a new sheriff in town, and he said he's not going to put up with that anymore. So I think that's a good thing for the American people. I think you're going to see some of the funds that are being directed toward NATO maybe could be directed to interstate highways and other infrastructure projects in the United States of America, because Lord knows in Louisiana we could use a few. Well,
I would think when you send all your troops to Germany, they would at least give you preferential treatment in buying natural gas, right?
Well, yeah. That's the thing is that Trump pointed that out that one of the biggest security interests a nation has is securing its energy needed for production and its economy. And here we have Germany with I think a third of its energy coming from Russia. So that's very problematic. The president recognized that, and he's pointing that out and calling them out on it. So it's interesting to Trump presidency.
We love them to buy some of our natural gas after we get all these LNG export terminals up and running right there. In Louisiana, it'd be great for the country. It would be.
Well, what's interesting is the last time I was up in D.C., I was speaking to some folks, and they were talking about how there's some municipalities and states up in the Northeast that are now actually arranging contracts to buy natural gas from Russia. And here we are floating on natural gas in Louisiana and in Texas and all over the United States of America, and certainly even in the Utica, which is up in the Northeast. And because we got a bunch of environmental folks that don't want to have a pipeline, we're going to ship in natural gas, is the plan, from Russia, which I'm sure has an impeccable environmental record. producing and bringing natural gas to market.
Oh, absolutely. Maybe we should send the EPA to Russia. It might be colluding. That's what it was. But, and I tell you, if people follow us on Twitter at AG Jeff Landry, you'd see, we tweeted out the president's pick, Supreme Court pick, after Monday's announcement of Justice Kavanaugh, who's now going to be before the Senate. We're certainly going to encourage. And I would hope all Louisianans out there encourage our 2 U.S. senators to come out right away and support Brett Kavanaugh. It's an outstanding pick by President Trump. I think he's done a great job of fulfilling a campaign promise, something you don't see a lot of politicians end up doing at the end of the day. But he went out there and said, I am absolutely going to interview and appoint strict constructionists to the Supreme Court, and this is his second pick. So it's a great pick. Yep,
and Judge Kavanaugh's got a very, very impeccable record. Been at the D.C. Circuit now for over a dozen years. He's a guy that really, really believes in the separation of powers, which is I think is a great thing and a benefit to the state of Louisiana when we talk about regulations and rules. He's a guy that believes in states' rights kind of things, and it's going to be interesting as he goes through this process the types of questions he has, because he certainly has a very long record of being a very consistent guy when it comes to those types of issues.
Well, I know our Solicitor General, Liz Muro, had an opportunity, I think, to argue before him at the D.C. Circuit on the, I don't know if it was the Clean Coal Power Plan a couple of years ago, and she held him in very high regard. She said that the questions he asked were very pointed, very informative, seemed to be very he had studied the topic, and she bragged about him. She thinks he's going to be a great pick. So,
that's a great plug for our Solicitor General.
Yeah.
It's also a great plug for our new office that we just created at the Attorney General's office, which I think was a promise we made when you were campaigning, that we were going to create an Office of Federalism, because certainly industries and the state itself has to deal with tons and tons and tons of regulations coming from the federal government, and now we have a full-time officer along with some staff and some great lawyers that are well poised now to take Louisiana's cause up to the D.C. Circuit and to challenge these federal regulations. It's something that I don't think the public knows a whole bunch about, but we're involved in literally dozens of cases from clean coal. We just got involved in a case that I know people in Acadiana have an interest in with TWIC cards. That's the little identification card that you need to get offshore or get out in the Gulf of Mexico if you work out there. If you're in a port or a harbor of Louisiana, you have to have one of these cards, and it's the Coast Guard and overregulated as they always do, and we're actually challenging that rule right now, and I think that's going to reduce the burden on our oil and gas industry and our folks trying to get out and make a living.
Yeah, Brandon, maybe. I mean, I'm not trying to solicit an interview for Moon, but, maybe we could get our Solicitor General in there and Moon could interview him when he gets back.
I'm sure he would love that.
I would have liked to have interviewed here, but, it probably would have been, bringing too much. We already got Bill here. It'd be like bringing the Department of Justice into the studio.
Right.
It'd be like,
another shameless plug. That's what they call that in the radio industry, right, Brandon?
Yes, it is.
But no, I think we're going to have a great lineup today, and we look forward to those callers calling us on that Hickson Hazard hotline. We encourage people out there to call if you have any questions, want to speak to us about some of the topics that we're going to be discussing today. Like I said, we're going to have Congressman Clay Higgins, Katie Arrington, Daryl Purpera to talk about Medicaid fraud. Of course, that's something that we run as the Attorney General. I am tasked with overseeing, and we have in our office. It's called the MCFU, the Medicaid Fraud Unit, which does an exceptional job. And we recognized real early on that one of our biggest partners in trying to combat fraud, waste, and abuse in this state, unfortunately, our only partner really is Daryl Purpera, and he's done a fantastic job. Can't wait to give him an opportunity to talk about a couple of the things that he's been talking about and that he's been reporting on. And then, like I said, we'll have Mick Mulvaney, who's the OMB director. We talk about government reform. Mm-hmm. because there's a lot of things that that they're doing that the Trump administration they get no credit for.
Yeah, and I'm going to go ahead and give us another shameless plug there, Brandon. Our MAFUCO unit, our Medicaid Fraud Control Unit, was awarded last year, I believe, by the Inspector General of the United States of America over the Medicaid fraud on the federal level. An award as being the number one Medicaid fraud unit in the United States of America. We're very proud of that. It's just a great program. We're able to root out a lot of fraud on the provider side. We've been fighting tooth and nail to try to get a recipient fraud program going. I'm sure some of the public may be aware about that. We've been pretty loud about that. So great things coming.
We can talk about that with Darwin. It's not as good as the Sportscast program award, Brand, but we're working there. We're working our way up there.
Thank you.
All right, we'll take a break, and we'll have Congressman Clay Higgins coming up next. Good morning, Louisiana. This is Attorney General Jeff Landry, guest hosting for Moon Griffon. We have guests calling in on the Hickson Has It hotline. And our first guest from Abbeville to Crowley and Lake Charleston, Morgan City, the people of Southwest Louisiana are hardworking, God-fearing, patriotic Americans, just like our first guest, who is their representative, Congressman Clay Higgins, Congressman for Louisiana's 3rd Congressional District. Clay.
Good morning, my friend. How are you, sir?
Great to be with you. How are things?
Oh, continuing the battle, and we're continuing to win, brother. We're gonna stay engaged up here in this bizarre realm in Washington D.C., which you're very familiar with. There's some real characters up here, and boy, they're cutting up on the left right now, are they not?
Oh Lord, their hair's on fire.
Yeah.
One more Supreme Court pick, it might be.
Seems like the sky is always falling across the aisle, isn't it?
Man, look, I'd hate to be a liberal. I mean, you got to wait. I mean, you got anxiety 24/7. I mean, I guess it's good for the drug companies that sell anxiety medicine. I don't know, but Clay, look, we wanted to give you an opportunity. I know that you and Senator Kennedy both have introduced legislation or resolutions denouncing the left for their call for abolishing ICE. And ICE rescues hundreds of kids. I think last year they rescued like 500 human trafficking victims and over 900 children that was subject to exploitation. And of course, this is the organization that the left, this is the agency that the left wants to abolish, right?
Right, and it's exactly, Jeff, the Democrats right now, are seizing upon any opportunity to create division in our nation, and they're manufacturing problems where they don't exist. And to call for the abolishment of ICE is like dangerously ridiculous. ICE is the front line, man. Their enforcement removal operations in 2017. Let me just run through a couple of numbers for your listeners there. Talking about 76,000 drug offenses, 48,000 assault offenses, 11,000 weapons violations, 5,000 sexual assault offenses, 2,000 kidnapping offenses, and 1,800 homicide offenses. These are the kind of criminal aliens that ICE arrested in 2017. Those are the numbers. So to say that you want to abolish ICE basically means that you support human trafficking, drug trafficking, and weapons trafficking. That's the posture. To my amazement, I find my colleagues across the aisle, many of whom I have a great respect for, but collectively, they have lost their minds over there, man. So we have introduced this resolution. We're actually introducing it this evening because the interest in original co-sponsorship has been great. We're sitting on about 40 original co-sponsors right now. So we were going to drop it yesterday afternoon. We decided to drop it this evening to give some of my Republican colleagues opportunity to get on the list of original co-sponsors. And we're just going to make a very clear statement that we support law enforcement in this country. This is a nation of law and order. A sovereign nation cannot stand without sovereign borders. ICE are the boots on the ground. They're the point of our spear down there, protecting our borders and making arrests of serious felons. So we're just going to be very loud and clear about this with this resolution. And as you mentioned, there's a Senate version as well. We're introducing it bicamerally, which is the way to go.
Congressman Higgins, I could tell you one thing that's astonishing to me is that these folks, I was listening to the news this morning coming in, this judge down here is protesting about the fact that we're testing these kids to determine by DNA samples to determine whether or not this is actually the parents of these children. And you and I know you were involved in law enforcement for years. You and I both know that a majority of that traffic that's coming in with these kids, a lot of these kids are being exploited and brought here for sexual exploitation.
Exactly.
For who knows what.
Listen,
and the fact that
we have a responsibility. You know what? We're going to protect those children whether anybody likes it or not.
Yeah.
And a lot of these young teenagers being brought across the border by allegedly a parent or a relative that's not their parent or their relative in many cases. And you have to investigate that. You can't presume that what's presented to you on the surface is true. Anyone with any kind of investigator's background knows that a victim of abuse, they will lie to protect their abuser if they in the presence of that abuser, or even if they're not immediately in the presence, if they still feel the threat of that abuser. You have to separate that child and interview them in the right way to determine what the real truth is, and then through DNA testing and blood work, there's various means by which scientifically we can determine if that's actually a relative, and then we move forward from there, and we'll put them back together if they're real and safe, and it's the right thing to do. But we have to protect the children's best interest.
All right. Well, Clay, look, we're running out of time right here, and Moon's got me on a tight schedule. We really appreciate everything that you've been doing. We appreciate your fight in securing our nation's border. We know it's a public safety, it's a public safety issue. So thank you again. Look forward to seeing you again, my friend. Coming up, our next guest is a woman who hopefully will be joining Clay in Congress next year, South Carolina State Representative Katie Arrington. She's going to be joining us and talk about a medical update on herself. She was involved in a terrible automobile accident with actually a Louisiana native Jackie Goff, and she's the one that defeated Mark Sanford. So looking forward to our next guest. Thank you. All right. Good morning, Louisiana. This is Attorney General Jeff Landry, guest hosting for Moon Griffon, joined in studio by my Chief Deputy Bill Stiles. And, of course, Brandon had I wanted to say keyboard. That's a big old board right there, Brandon.
Oh, yeah, it's a big old board.
Yeah, we got our next guest is Katie Arrington. But I want to remind everyone, make sure to follow our guest on Twitter. Of course, our Twitter handle is @AG Jeff Landry, and Clay Higgins is @Rep Clay Higgins. And then our next guest, Katie Arrington, is @K Arrington SC, stands for South Carolina. Of course, we encourage people to go to Twitter since Facebook seems to be, censoring conservative content. So we just want to make sure that you have every avenue you need in order to get your good, conservative, truthful, factual news, right? Right, Brandon?
You're right.
All right. So again, our next guest is the lady who defeated Mark Sanford. And of course, she was Donald Trump's pick as well down in South Carolina. And what's interesting is she had a Louisiana connection. She was actually involved in a horrific automobile crash right after her primary victory. And she was with in the automobile with her was a Louisiana native, Jackie Goff. And so we invited Katie to come on the radio today and talk about kind of give us an update and see how Jackie's doing and tell us all some great things. And of course, we want people from Louisiana to keep her and Jackie in their prayers as they recover.
Yep, absolutely.
So, Katie?
Yep, she's on the line right now.
Yes, I am. Thank you for having me. How y'all doing today?
We're doing wonderful. It's a shame South Carolina, there's like 4 states in between Louisiana and South Carolina, because y'all share so many common things with Louisiana. Y'all got a great coast. Y'all fish for redfish down there, speckled trout. Y'all got nice marshes, good port city.
Yeah, but y'all have crawfish, and that makes all the difference. Let's be really honest. I mean, you do know about how Charleston and New Orleans specifically are connected through Spay-War. And that's how I met Jackie.
Oh, okay. Great. Well, and tell our listeners out there a little bit about your campaign. Tell us about, give us an update on Jackie and how you doing.
Well, I am home resting with some amazing assistance because we are both struggling. It was a pretty horrific accident. Jackie is, as you stated earlier, is a native of Louisiana, and we met each other, 10 years ago. Charleston and New Orleans are connected by something called SPAY Awards, the Navy, Space, and Naval Warfare Centers. Actually, I met Congressman Scalise, Dennis Pig. I mean, there are a bunch of people from that area, Bobby Savoy, that actually were the foray into politics for me. So I owe that community so much. But Miss Jackie and I were driving down the road, and we were hit on a head-on collision doing about 60 miles an hour. She, by the grace of God, and I swear God's embrace came and held us both back. Neither one of us have any neurological damage, any facial trauma, any upper body trauma. Where Jackie took the brunt of it was in her belly and her legs. So she is going to be in the hospital another 4 weeks here in Charleston, and then our plan is to put her on a private plane and ship her back to NOLA to do a rehab. So Ms. Goff, lifelong employee of the federal government, and actually we were leaving to go to Hilton Head, her retirement party from SPAY, 41 years. So please keep Miss Jackie Goff in your prayers. This is an amazing woman, and they don't make them any better out of the great state of Louisiana than her.
Well, we certainly going to ask everyone out there, all our listeners out there, to please keep her in their prayers as she hopefully has a speedy recovery. And so, talk about your campaign. I mean, it was just a wonderful. I mean, just a very interesting campaign. When you see a lot on the media about the Miss Cortez, how she defeated Joe Crowley up in New York, and it was like a earth-shattering, groundbreaking election. Of course, I'm sorry, you're a conservative, so they downplay you in the national media, of course. But talk about the campaign.
So I am currently a state house rep here in South Carolina. I'm a freshman legislator, 2 years in. And, we were tired. South Carolina is a conservative district. We were tired of somebody representing us who was not standing up for our conservative values. And Mark Sanford, Mr. No, we called him Professor No down here, up here actually from you guys. He just wasn't getting the job done. I mean, he would go on national TV and bash President Trump. He had nothing good to say about our president. And my way of thinking is, respect the office of the presidency. If you have a problem with him, go to his office and have a conversation with him. Don't go running to CNN. Of all of the news outlets, he would go to CNN. And what really made me feel I was, catalyst to run was when he went on national TV after Congressman Scalise was shot. The morning after, Mark Sanford went on TV and said that President Trump was culpable in the shooting.
Wow.
And that was it.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Katie.
Yeah. He said arm in arm with Jim Clyburn and said that President Trump was culpable in the shooting. And that was pretty much the red flag that, threw down with me, and that was it. It was game on. And, he's been on every national news outlet. This was about the allegiance to Trump. No. This was about allegiance to the conservative, message. We did a debate on the Yorktown, which is an incredibly patriotic place, and the question came up, is abortion a political or social issue? And Mark Sanford said it's a political, difficult issue. No, it's not. And, my response, after I picked my jaw off the floor, the next question that came up was about Iran, and he said that he didn't feel that Iran was an existential threat to global peace or to U.S. security. What?
Katie, before we get you off, you have such an interesting life story.
Oh yeah,
so interesting. You've worked your way from Denny's all the way to a congresswoman from South Carolina. Tell us a little bit about that life story.
Oh, absolutely. I graduated high school in upstate New York. I was a daughter of a CIA man, so traveled around quite extensively. Went to school for about a year and a half, and I met this gorgeous man. in Syracuse, New York. Married him a few months later, and off he went to Desert Storm and came back. And I had been, working and going to school, got pregnant, and had my son, who was born with something called craniosynostosis, no soft spots. His brain was being crushed by his own skull. We were medevac to Walter Reed, and that's part of what makes me, serve. I owe this nation a debt of gratitude for saving my son's life. If Doug wasn't in the Army, if we didn't have the doctors and the medical resources available, I don't know that my son would have been saved. But when I came back after 6 months in ICU with him, I went to go put him in daycare to work to pay off the debt that we had, and there were no daycares available. So I went and got trained to run a special needs daycare in my home, and I worked a graveyard shift at Denny's at night because I'm a problem solver. I did that. I worked my way
well, Katie,
through.
we're running into the end of the slot here, but I just want to, it's a little known fact that there's a lot of Cajuns that live actually in South Carolina. It was one of the first stops along the way for the people that were exiled from Acadia. So we got some kinfolk up in South Carolina, and it's going to be so nice to have another conservative and somebody we could call upon in Congress that's going to be fighting the good fight. So congratulations.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, gentlemen.
And look, I want to tell you, you do realize that you're setting yourself up for a difficult task. Problem solvers in Washington before President Trump got there were few and far between. So, at least you're going when you got a couple of problem solvers there. So, look, we wish you good luck. Why don't you give everyone your website if people want to follow you, good conservative. We need as many great conservatives in the U.S. House of Representatives as we can. Why don't you tell our listeners out there, we'll try to follow you and we'll pray for you.
Oh, well, thank you, and I need your prayers, and so does Jackie. But my website is VoteKatieArrington.com. Please go to the website. My Facebook is Katie Arrington for Congress. I need help. Still, the blue wave ain't going to wash upon the shores of South Carolina, but that's going to take, my hard work and donations to keep that blue wave off our shores. So please do help. VoteKatieArrington.com.
Well, thank you, Katie. We really appreciate you joining us. Again, our thoughts and our prayers go out to you. Hope that you and Jackie have a speedy recovery. We look forward to talking to you again after they swear you in and can meet some of our good brethren. We've got, of course, coming up is another native South Carolinian in a couple of. Is that next? No, we got Daryl Purpera next, but after that, Mick Mulvaney, South Carolina.
There you go.
I'm telling you, man, it's just
Louisiana and South Carolina.
Yeah, we might have something going on here. Yeah, our next guest is going to be Daryl Purpera. Can't wait to hear from him. It's going to be interesting. Just saw a nice tweet from the governor. We can talk about that with Daryl Purpera. All right. Good morning, Louisiana. This is Attorney General Jeff Landry, joined by our Chief Deputy Bill Stiles, in studio with Brandon at the, the keyboard.
At the controls.
What do you call it? The controls.
The controls.
I feel like I need to say this. Yeah. How y'all are.
And of course, we have great people calling in on the Hickson Has It hotline. That's our big sponsor, right?
Yes,
That's
sir.
right. I mean, we can't say Hickson Has It too many times, right?
No, you can say it multiple times per segment if you want.
Right. But look, we've had a great group of people that have called in, some great guests. And next we have a straight shooter who recently called the Louisiana Department of Health oversight over our state's Medicaid program, willy-nilly, loosey-goosey. That's quoted from Daryl Purpera. But I will tell you, our next guest is a great guy, right? Nonpartisan, appointed by the legislature to go out there and try to root out fraud, waste, and abuse in government. And of course, that's a high value, a high target rich environment in the state of Louisiana, unfortunately. And probably the biggest one is our Medicaid program. And Daryl and I have really had an opportunity to work together on that. And so, Daryl, we'd love to give you an opportunity to talk about a couple of the reports that you put out regarding Medicaid and the impact that it's having on the budget.
Well, good morning, General Landry and Bill, and look forward to the conversation. What would you like to know? I can tell you, I just got back from D.C. Late last night and had meetings with other state auditors, various congressmen and various senators, including Senator Kennedy, on these issues, and the Governmental Accountability Office. And maybe just put some context to this whole issue. The GAO, that's the Governmental Accountability Office, They say that on the current trajectory of Medicaid, that by 2025 we're going to exceed right at $1 trillion in our Medicaid cost. That is growing roughly at 6% per year. And one of the reasons that's so important is because our debt to GDP ratio has basically never been higher. Right after World War II, it was at 106% the debt to GDP ratio, and they say that we're going to cross that path again in about 10 to 14 years. So it's a big issue in the arena of improper payments. I don't want to say fraud, but fraud's part of the improper payments. But improper payments, the GAO estimates, and that the improper payments right now in Medicaid is a little over $50 billion per year, and that's grossly underestimated because of the way that the Center for Medicaid Services is calculating the improper payments on the managed care side of the Medicaid.
Well, and my figures might be off to some degree, but I'm a FUCO unit who I know that works real closely with you guys. That's our Medicaid fraud unit. If I'm not mistaken, Inspector General in some reports out of D.C., they believe that just fraud in the Medicaid system nationwide it could be as high as 20%, somewhere between 10 to 20%. So if you talk about a $1 trillion program, right? $1 trillion, it's a welfare program to give health insurance that people do not have to pay for. It's free. 10%, just 10% is $100 billion. And if that's fraud and $50 billion is overpayments, that's $150 billion. There's a lot of roads that we could pave, a lot of bridges that we could repair, and certainly a lot of raises we could give teachers in that if we were able to rein in control. And so talk about a couple of the recent audit reports that you came out. I know me and you specifically, I've always been a real honed in on recipient fraud, right? Because I believe that people who steal from the Medicaid system that are ineligible, that in other words, they don't qualify, but yet are taking the benefit, are basically stealing from the poor. And I know that's a sore subject for you as well. You want to talk about it a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, it is a little bit of a sore subject because it often gets the narrative gets messed up in that, we're kind of accused of a war against the poor. We're accused of trying to take benefits away from people who need the benefits. And I think nothing could be further from the truth on that. What we're trying to do is make sure the funds are there for those who need it. And if a person doesn't qualify for Medicaid, well, there are other programs such as a federally facilitated exchange program that they may qualify for. So it's not trying to take anyone's health insurance away from them. But this particular program has rules and regulations. And look, you're right. I'm the guy that's the rule guy. All I want to do is follow the rules. And if Congress or somebody else wants to change rules, well, they can do that. But until they do, we're gonna try to make sure the program follows the rules. So yes, in the arena of recipients, we issue reports showing that we had 13,000 individuals who had not had any service in over a 4-year period. So when we start diving into that, looking at, well, why would you not have any medical services in a 4-year period? And we found that over 400 of those individuals was because they didn't live in our state anymore and hadn't lived in our state in those 4 years. So we're still paying the premiums with our Louisiana dollars that's allocated to us. We're paying premiums for somebody who doesn't live in our state, and they're most likely in a Medicaid program in another state. And
what was the average premium that the state pays?
Well, it's roughly about $350 a month if you're not in the expansion population, and then it's somewhere in the neighborhood of $500 a month if you're in the expansion population. So it's serious dollars.
Yeah. So if you take 13,000, if you take 10,000 at $400. That's real money. Again, I think it goes to show you the inefficiencies in the program. And of course, I know that this session you had a couple of different bills working with some of our great conservative legislators out there who are trying to rein in this spending. I think Representative Bacala was one of the sponsors of your bills, and they got out of the House, but then what happened to them?
Yeah, we had a bill that would allow the state auditor to use the tax data to audit the Medicaid program. This is one of the primary issues. I was in D.C. yesterday. This is a problem not just for me as the state auditor, but for all 50 state auditors. This program is a federal program. It comes with rules. You know, it comes with red tape, lots of red tape. And eligibility is absolutely defined in the law. And so we have to follow that. Well, the key determinant of eligibility in the program is income. And for those individuals who file a tax return, now not all Medicaid recipients are going to file tax returns because they make an amount that's lower than what's required. But for those who do file a tax return, the income eligibility is based upon the modified adjusted gross income, which is very much a tax number. And so the auditors around the nation need to be using the tax returns to gauge whether or not our departments are doing a good job at ensuring that this requirement's met. Here in Louisiana, because of our state law, I don't have, let me phrase it a little different way. My auditors can look at tax data all day long. We can look at every tax return of any person that files a tax return in Louisiana when we're auditing the Department of Revenue. But I can't use that same data to go and audit the Medicaid program. And that's just it's a Louisiana law. I believe it's wrong. I think it needs to be changed.
Well, one of the things, Daryl, that I think was interesting is that when we talked about Medicaid expansion, I think the original number, calculation economically of what we thought the pool of those potential people was roughly around 300,000. I think since the program has got going, I think we've signed up 400 to 450,000 folks. I mean, that's a disparity of 100 to 150,000 folks in the program. Isn't that indicative?
Yeah, and now, look, we appreciate it. We're coming up to the end of the segment. I can't thank you enough for making yourself available. I know you got plenty of information. We encourage people to follow you on your Twitter handle at LA Legis Auditor is the Twitter handle at LA LEGISAUDITOR. All right, great. Coming up next is Mick Mulvaney. Can't wait to have him on. He's Donald Trump's OMB director. Great guy from South Carolina. Looking forward to it. Right after the news. All right. Good morning, Louisiana. Brandon's giving me the finger, but I mean, not the bad one, right? Yeah. All right. Good morning, Louisiana. It's Attorney General Jeff Landry, guest hosting for the Honorable. Can we say that the Honorable Moon Griffon?
The Honorable Moon.
The Honorable. Honorable, dishonorable. I mean, he's honorable, right? Yeah. Joined by my Chief Deputy, Bill Stiles. Bill.
Hey, we got the guy getting ready to come on. Jeff is the man in charge of actually draining the swamp.
I know. Isn't it great that we brought Mick Mulvaney to Louisiana before Donald Trump appointed him, so he knew exactly what a swamp looked like? Mick, how you doing today?
How is it possible they let you on the radio?
They were desperate, Mick.
I mean, that's got to be dangerous. I would listen to this just for fun. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. It's great to really have you. And for listeners out there, we have Mick Mulvaney, Donald Trump's appointee to the Office of Management and Budget. He is the guy responsible for the government reform happening at the federal level, and we are it's just an honor to have you. Of course, it's always great to talk to you, and like I said, I'm glad you came down here and got to see what the swamp is. So tell us how y'all are draining the swamp up there.
Well, in fact, I'm talking to you from the car as I drive from the White House over to our old office on the Hill to talk to some of the congressional leaders about some of the proposals. The highlight stuff that gets all the attention is merging the Department of Education with the Department of Labor, trying to get one point of contact for food regulation, trying to bring some sanity, Jeff, to the government. The government's just screwed up. You know it. I know it. We've seen it from the inside. It's sort of grown up over the course of the last 100 years, and no one's ever done any real house cleaning on it. No one's ever gone back to scratch and said, look, there's some things here that can be really, really fixed at the very fundamental level. The president about it. I mean, spent a good bit of time on it. So it's going to take a lot of energy the next couple of years here, the next 2 years in this administration. But I think we get some good stuff done. Well,
you're right. I mean, just like anything out there, down in South Louisiana, like in South Carolina as well, or all over Louisiana, we have, great big live oaks. And if you just let a live oak just grow and you never trim it, it becomes a mess, right? Which is kind of like the federal government. You know, if you don't go in and trim some of those branches every now and then, kind of prune it up a little bit, and that's really a problem. You know, one of the things that you know, I applaud y'all for is trying to really bring efficiencies to it. So you're not saying, look, we're cutting this, right? No, what you're doing is trying to reorganize it to make it more efficient so it works better for the American people.
Yeah, you know me as much. I mean, I'd love to cut it. Don't get me wrong. We can have that conversation another day, but that's not what this is about. This is entirely about efficiencies, which is why I'm hopeful that maybe some Democrats will help us on this. But this is the kind of thing where you go and say, look, it doesn't make any sense that we have 46 different federal job training programs at 16 different federal agencies. That's just stupid. And if you could get that down to, you know, a handful of them, maybe they could work a little bit better. Of those 46, by the way, the best of my knowledge, only 2 of them know if they are actually successful in helping people get jobs. This is the kind of crap that I think people are just frustrated with, and the president's frustrated with it too. So when we laid out some of these ideas, he's pretty excited about it.
Well, and you know, there's a cost associated to that as well, because when you actually do streamline it, you end up saving money. You're not duplicating those services. You don't need as many people to perform those particular services. And at the end of the day, there's a cost savings associated with that. Am I not correct?
There is, absolutely is, and that's the pitch to my Republican friends. But you know, I need to get Democrat votes to do some of this because of the rules of the Senate. So my pitch to the Democrats is: look, you can do one of two things. If you're more efficient in your government, you can either get the same level of services for less money, or more services for the same money. Now, the Republicans might like the first one. The Democrats might like the second one. Peter Welch, you remember Peter? Peter was in Congress with us. One of my best friends. I'll never forget the very first time I worked with him. He walked up and wanted to work with me on a bill to save money on utility bills at federal buildings. And I remember asking him, I said, Peter, you're a left-wing nut job from Vermont. I'm a right-wing nut job from South Carolina. Why do you want to work with me on this? He goes, Mick, Republicans like small government. Democrats like big government, but we should all hate bad government. And he's absolutely right.
Oh, look,
so, that's what we're driving.
No, look, I applaud you. I think, and you know, I tell you, I know that in D.C. you can kind of end up like in a bubble, but I can tell you when you go around America, certainly you come around Louisiana anyway, you just go to Walmart, Costco, wherever you shop, you talk to people, you know, there's an upbeat feeling about the things that y'all are doing. And I think it's because of exactly what you're talking about. It's because they believe and they have confidence that people like you. And I have a tremendous amount of confidence in you. I know you know the numbers. I know you know the organization, that you can go in and you can retool it. You can reorganize it in a way that you can take that dollar and get a better service for it and end up saving money. So at the end of the day, the taxpayer is not treated like they're being treated here in Louisiana, like an ATM machine, where all they do is just say, we want to grow government, so just give us more money. And that doesn't work.
Well, and not just the taxpayer. I mean, look at the world through the eyes of the small businessman. When I was a kid in high school, I worked for a family friend who made frozen pizzas. The pizzas you used to be able to buy at the 7-Eleven and convenience stores. Like that was a side business for him. And I used to work in the freezer in the summertime. I had no idea that when he was making those frozen pizzas, when he made cheese pizza, he had to deal with the USDA regulations. But as soon as he put pepperoni on the pizza, he had to deal with the Food and Drug Administration. I'm not making that up.
Pepperoni's a drug now?
And then,
I mean, I guess it could be addicting.
Think about all the trouble that business goes through to jump through all these hoops. Government doesn't have to be the bad guy, and I think that's why everybody's sort of excited about what President Trump is doing. Is they look at this stuff through the eyes of ordinary Americans and say that doesn't make any sense, and that's the exact same perspective that Donald Trump brings to. Too many politicians look at it and go, well, there's a perfectly good reason for this, and it makes complete jurisdictional sense in the committees. And Trump looks at that and says, that's a bunch of crap. It doesn't make any sense. It's bad for taxpayers. It's bad for business. Let's fix it. And that's why it's so fun to work for him, because he doesn't care about the history, he doesn't care about the jurisdiction of committees of Congress. He cares about doing the right thing, and that's a big part of what we're trying to get done.
Mick, I guess one of the things that is interesting about this president is that, a lot of people, in my experience, at least in D.C., is a lot of people that think about solving problems and think about what might be a good regulation. None of these people have actually ever executed or had to go out and perform and build something through this process. We have a president here who all his life has dealt with regulations from local to federal, and he absolutely understands the impact that those things have on economic values.
That's a great point. I mean, you go read his book, The Art of the Deal, and there's a couple chapters about how frustrating it was for him to work with a city government in New York City just to get something as easy as an ice skating rink built. So he comes to this with the right perspective, which is, this is crazy. I've lived it from the private sector, and we can do it better. Not only that, he's been hiring people that have that same background. People don't talk nearly enough about Linda McMahon at the Small Business Administration, the lady who built WWE along with her husband Vince McMahon. I mean, this is the kind of person that he has brought into the administration who has real world experience with where government can do things right, but also where government does things wrong and what needs to be fixed. So, yeah, it's not a bunch of academics like the previous administration. It's not a bunch of ivory tower people. It's not a bunch of long-term government service folks. It's real people who have been successful but have seen how things can be better, and that's the people he's put in charge of this government reorg, which is why it's so exciting.
Mick, I know one of the big topics here in Louisiana, because we have so much wetlands and, you know, the whole state of Louisiana is environmental paradise. We deal a lot with the EPA. Can you tell us a few things about what you guys are doing specific to the EPA?
Yeah, well, the EPA, actually, I talked a little bit more about something that is also up your guys' alley. EPA is doing great. They're deregulating. You know, we lost Scott Pruitt, and that was a loss, I think. I think he's doing a nice job, but I think he had set some wheels in motion in there that was sort of rein in the EPA and get them back to what they're supposed to do, which is to protect the environment. They're not supposed to be an impediment to growth. They're not supposed to be an impediment to development, to business. They're not supposed to be an impediment to infrastructure. You know, it shouldn't take 10 years to build a road because the EPA wants to study 58 different things. But switch gears with me for a second, talk about the Army Corps of Engineers, which I know is frustrating.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
In Louisiana.
There you go.
For South Carolina. Listen, there's a perfectly good reason for the Department of Defense to be in charge of certain things, okay? But that doesn't include ports. It doesn't include intercoastal waterways. It doesn't include our inland locks and dams and stuff like that. Those were military 100 years ago. They're not military anymore. So one of our proposals is to take the Army Corps of Engineers, find the stuff that is really military and leave that at the Department of Defense. Find the stuff that is transportation, ports, inland waterways, and move that over to the Department of Transportation where the system actually works a lot better. And then find the stuff that is environmental. They do a lot of mitigation work, you know, water management kind of stuff, and move that to the Department of Interior because they do that better. And get the Army Corps of Engineers out of the way. Everybody from state and local government to private sector has got horror stories about the Army Corps of Engineers because they don't do that part of their job well. When it comes to the military stuff, they're great. When it comes to the civilian stuff, somebody else can do it better. And that's one of the highlights, I think, of the reorganization program that the president's most fired up about.
Well, I can tell you, if in Louisiana, I don't know what Trump's approval numbers are, but they just
went up. Yeah, Mick, why don't you, I know your Twitter handle is at Mick Mulvaney, OMB. Where can others, the listeners out there that are interested in some of the things that y'all are doing, what's the best place for them to go to find out some of the great things that y'all are doing there?
If they go to just honestly, I don't know because you and I both know the answer to that, which I'm not allowed to do my own Twitter handle. I have no idea what my stuff is anymore. Oh.
Mick, I always say, you got this great problem. It's just your brute honesty. I'm going to have to call Patel, and here's what we're going to do for listeners out there. You know, Mick, he's so focused, laser focused, right, on reforming government. He didn't even have his Twitter handle. But I'm going to get it. I'm going to get Patel to. We'll put it up on Moon's website, right, and we'll get some links out there so we can brag about you, Mick. I mean, look, we want to brag about you. We want to.
Very astute staff just leaned up to the back seat and said there's a performance.gov website. How about that?
Oh, man, look, I like that.
Everything.
Put that poor boy in the front seat, not the back seat, Mick. Look, you be careful. Good seeing you. Good talking to you. Hope to see you soon. Thank you so much for sharing some of your time with us today.
God bless you, Jeffrey. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, great. Next is Pastor Tom Shepard's coming up, and just a great community leader, man of God, and he's going to be joining us to talk about topics that parents and guardians should know about cyber safety and how to keep your kids safe. All right, good morning, Louisiana. This is Attorney General Jeff Landry, joined by our Chief Deputy, Bill Stiles, Brandon at the control board.
Yes, sir. You got it.
I got it.
Yes, sir.
And we got the Hickson Hazard hotline wide open for.
That's right. I wonder if does Dallas listen?
No, I think
In
Dallas,
between selling cars.
Yeah, I think Dallas has to listen to Moon enough. I think they have a personal relationship there that I don't know that he wants to listen to him on the radio.
Well, we appreciate the Hickson Hazard hotline, and of course, on the Hickson Hazard hotline right now is just a good friend of mine, just a true community leader and a man of God, Pastor Tom Shepard. Tom.
Yes, sir.
How are you today?
I'm doing good, brother. How about yourself?
Good morning. I'm doing great. We wanted to get you on to talk about some of the things that you and our office, Louisiana Department of Justice, are doing in order to help educate parents and guardians on the risks out there, in this cyber world that our kids are living in. Because Bill will tell you, I'm going to quote him, right? So if this gets me in trouble, Millet, it's Bill quote. Bill says that the most dangerous thing we can put in a child's hands or in any juvenile's hands is a cell phone.
That's correct. I think I really believe that, Joe.
There really isn't.
Way more powerful than a handgun.
And so, so why don't you talk about, this is your opportunity to kind of talk about what we've been doing.
Sure. Well, I sit on the Morals and Ethics Committee for the Louisiana Baptist Convention, so I'm in front of and helping about 1,400 churches in the state of Louisiana, from Shreveport all the way down to New Orleans. And so this data comes to my desk that we go through, and the pornography and the exposure to pornography to kids and the ages that they're now exposed to is massively alarming. And I thought to myself, the newest statistics are children now between the ages of 12 and 18, 95% have been exposed to hardcore pornography at least one time in a week, and girls are now at 68% between 12 and 18. When I was a kid, you had dirty magazines that were in that little store that was way across town, and you had to go out of your way to be exposed to that. But the phones and the subculture of the social media has infringed and come through the back door into our homes. So as a pastor in a church with, we have up over 600 members in our church now, and it is continuing to grow. There's 2 other campuses we feed to. I am constantly seeing and constantly doing counseling for these parents where these kids are coming up and coming away with these ideas on the increase on the violence in regard to sexuality, homosexuality, and all these other areas that all of a sudden are becoming more prevalent. And I'm asking myself, how does this child come to this conclusion? And I found out about Jeff's team on cyber crime, and I started looking at some of the stuff and started digging into the social media, and the exposure is happening in this subculture that's created by students within Snapchat and Instagram, Tumblr, these areas where they get to, and they go to their peers for advice that they are Googling and getting advice from these things that are oftentimes aired or oftentimes not a guy or a peer at all, but maybe an adult who is a perpetrator who is getting at these kids. And they're giving them these advice, and they're walking away with believing this is truth. So truth now has become relative. It is not absolute. There's no moral absolute. These children are making decisions based off of this relative thing that feels good for the moment, so it must be okay. And so we have in our own church, when I polled our church, 72% of our kids believe that what's not necessarily right for them is right for you. They believe in a relativistic idea of truth. And so when they're exposed to social media and all that is on it, and the advice they get there from other peers and other people who may not have a basis of truth there, they are walking away with conclusions that are creating great problems in the counseling world, in the church world, in our communities, and that just fired me up. I wanted to to expose that. So we created a deal called the Subculture in Social Media, and I called Jeff, and man, I thank God that he's a godly guy and a family guy, and he is focused that way. And he said, man, we got a team that does that stuff. And we did an event here in June, and it was so successful within the parents as far as opening their eyes. They were blown away. So now in August, we are going to do a summit, August 25th, where Dr. Will Hall, who is on the Morals and Ethics Committee for the convention, myself, we're getting Gene Mills in here from the Louisiana Family Forum. We're going to get Jeff in there and address these things to the community and open it up to the community and say, hey, let's make you aware of what's going on.
Well, thank you, Pastor. We really appreciate it, and hopefully we'll encourage other people around the state to put on the same type of program that you're putting on. It's very informative, and appreciate you taking your time this morning. Again, coming up next is our all-star, capped off big guest, the Attorney General, Jeff, not Jeff Landry, Jeff Sessions. Mm-hmm. All right, coming up next. Good morning, Louisiana. This is Attorney General Jeff Landry, joined in studio with Chief Deputy Bill Stiles and Brandon at the control board.
Yes, sir.
And we have, everybody's joining us on the Hickson Hazard Hotline. And of course, capping off just a great show. Having the Louisiana Attorney General, guest host for Moon Griffon, you can't have a show unless you have the Attorney General, right? The Attorney General. So joining us now is Attorney General Jeff Sessions, Trump's nominee and Attorney General. General Sessions, great to have you on the Moon Griffon show and visiting with us here in Louisiana. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Jeff. It's good to talk to you, and thank you for your partnership and leadership in the state. We really appreciate that relationship.
Well, it's been great. I know we had dinner a couple of, 3 or 4 weeks ago when you were in New Orleans for the National Sheriff's Conference. Great. Thank you for coming down to Louisiana. You were the Attorney General in Alabama at one time. That's correct?
Yeah, I was, and the United States Attorney in Mobile for 12 years, so not too far away. And really, it was a great time for me. I enjoyed that. I felt like, as I know you do, that this is a fulfilling, rewarding job. It's a tough job, but if we do it right, we make our communities safer. We affirm the rule of law, and we just protect the safety of the American citizens, and that's important.
Well, I tell you, I was looking through your bio, and I realized that at 47, there's no way I could get all of your accolades. But the only thing I've accomplished that you have accomplished is as the Attorney General of Louisiana and you as Alabama. But you've got a great, outstanding career. You're doing a great job up in Washington. And I know we talked about giving you an opportunity to talk about two great events that projects that we worked on collectively. I think all 50 states joined you in the Operation Broken Heart. And also the National Healthcare Fraud Takedown. Both of these initiatives this year were record-setting. And so I wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of talk about it and brag about it, because you should. I mean, you're upholding the rule of law, and we're helping to ensure that our communities are safe.
Look, we're going to be relentless, and as I know you are, in going against people who abuse children. These abuse cases are just stunning, and it's amazing how many there are. But we've trained, as part of the Internet Crimes Against Children funding through the Office of Juvenile Justice Program of Department of Justice, the training of some 600,000 state and local officers. And in 3 months, throughout the country, state and local people have arrested over 2,000 individuals charged with abuse of children, mostly sexual abuse of children. You've been a big leader in that. I know you had a big number in Louisiana, and thank you for that. But we believe that we have to keep the pressure on. We cannot acquiesce and give in to this serious problem.
Well, look, I want to thank you, and certainly for those listening out there, because we get accolades from people all the time about the work we do in putting child predators behind bars. But I can tell you, none of that work, the team that we have here in Louisiana, would not be possible without the money that comes from your office. And so we appreciate that. And certainly for those members of Congress, I know a couple of them listen to this show as well, they should pay heed about that. I mean, because the funding we get from the U.S. Department of Justice is responsible for the ICAT unit that we have. So thank you.
Well, we're glad, and it's something that I think is important. It's working. We've had task forces in all 50 states. We've arrested 2,300 predators in just 3 months. This is a successful program. We're going to keep the pressure on. I know you feel strongly about it, as do I. And we just cannot abandon the field. We cannot allow them to use this new technology to abuse children.
Well, thank you. You're right. And another issue that is near and dear to my heart, something that we put at the top of our list is Medicaid fraud. Because I believe that when you defraud these welfare programs, you're stealing from those who need it the most. These programs are set up to help Americans, to give them a hand up. And when people go in there and they abuse those systems and steal from them, it's a crime at the highest level. And of course, we joined y'all in a national healthcare fraud takedown, which had outstanding results. And of course, in Louisiana, we did Medicaid expansion. Our Medicaid program seems to be ballooning. Wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about some of the things that y'all are doing to rein in that spending.
You are right. The federal government funds about 70% of Medicaid, but it is a huge expense for all of our states. And it's so important that people like yourself, like attorneys general around the country, work hard to maintain integrity in those programs. You've got individuals who lie about their income to become eligible, but you also have large medical supply companies and others that just fraudulently abuse this system, driving up costs to an incredible degree. And we've got to do better about it. It's one of the areas where we have a huge expenditure of state money and federal money. And of course, Medicare, the federal program is even larger, and it's a subject of great abuse too. And it's a big part of our projects on this healthcare fraud and opioid takedown.
General Sessions, one of the things that's these two things are kind of hand in hand, or at least we believe that the opioid problem we have in the United States is in large part funded by these people that are frauding Medicaid. A lot of the prescription drugs, we always got to remember when we're talking about the opioid problem, it was started by prescription drugs, and it's drugs that come from doctors, from pharmacists, and ultimately a lot of times from Medicaid programs and welfare programs where folks can go in there and be dishonest and disreputable about injuries they may have or may not have and get scripts and then turn around and sell them on the street.
You are so right about that. It is amazing. Since January of 17, we've charged nearly 200 doctors, and that is prescribing opioids. We've got cases where one doctor had $1 million in cash under his bed. Another case where lines were lines wound around outside the clinic where they were just writing prescriptions to get opioids. Lots of that is paid for by Medicare. A lot of it's paid by Medicaid. A lot of it is paid for by private insurance, all of which is costing the average American who's paying for this. So this is a devastating health problem in America. It leads to opioid, it leads to heroin, it leads to fentanyl, it leads to death. These addictions are powerful. We are determined to attack this opioid problem in America, and the foundation, as you suggested, starts too often with prescription to pain pills, and we just can't allow this to happen. We've seen a significant decline. The president has declared a national opioid health emergency in America. We're responding. All the agencies of government are responding. President Trump is determined to reduce the amount of these opioids that are getting into the marketplace illegally, and so are we. We may have as much as a 30% reduction. That's our goal, to have that much reduction in the prescriptions, because we are by far, as you know, the number one user of pain pills in the world. Nobody close.
Well, General, we are coming to the end, and I share with you that passion to work real hard to combat this epidemic that is killing tens of thousands of Americans and certainly impacting Louisiana as well. We appreciate the partnership that we've had with your office, and of course we want to remind our followers they can follow General Sessions at his Twitter handle at the Justice DEP Department on Twitter. And General, thanks again for joining us. Hope to see you again soon. Thank you again for everything that you're doing for both taking child predators off the street and helping us combat our Medicaid fraud. Appreciate you taking the time out of your day today. Thank you so very much.
Great to be with you. 85% of law enforcement at state and local. You're the great leader in the state, and we enjoy working with you.
Thank you, General. All right. We are coming up to the end of the hour. We're going to have our conclusion, and our special guest is going to be me. All right. Brandon giving us the finger. We're doing great. This is top of the hour. Good morning, Louisiana. This is Attorney General Jeff Landry, joined with our guest, Chief Deputy Bill Stiles, and we are wrapping up special guesting for the Moon Griffon Show. I want to thank all of our guests, and of course all those who stayed through listening to this. Hopefully it wasn't too painful, but it was great, and we're going to conclude with a great commentary, right?
Yeah. Well, before we get to that, I got to do another shameless plug. I feel like it's necessary here because we talked about Brandon's award, we talked about a Mofuko unit, but we got a new president of the National Association of Attorneys General. And he's sitting right next to me. Congratulations, boss.
Yeah, no, 18 months. I don't know. Is it congratulations or condolence?
Yeah. Well,
he's got to do all the work.
Yeah, all the chief deputies told me was condolences for me.
For you, it was congratulations for me.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Of course, look, we appreciate everyone listening out there, especially we noticed Elizabeth Chris doing a great job of following us on Twitter. I think we've given the media enough content to roll out the rest of the weekend with all these great guest appearances. We had, General Sessions, Mick, Mulvaney. I know that those following us in the next couple of days are going to do a great job as well. I think you got Brett Guyman coming up, right?
Oh, yes. We got Brett Guyman coming up. Clay Young is going to be coming up tomorrow. We've also got Representative Blake Miguez will be guest hosting while Moon is in Alaska. So,
well, Blake does that all the time. I mean, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to talk to Blake. He never called. When he does it, he didn't call in and say, Jeff, would you like to call in? And I have to fix that. But anyhow, look, let's talk about three issues I'd like to cover.
Let's go back to, what Pastor Tom was talking about with, child predators and smartphones. We recently put out a booklet called Be Smart with Your Smartphone. We had actually our guys from the Internet Crimes Against Children help us put it together, along with a bunch of other very smart people at our staff. This book, really, every parent can go to www.agjefflandry.com. You could download it in a PDF, and it will absolutely help educate you as parents out there on the things that you can do to try to protect your children from online predators and really to secure their phones because, there's so much going on right now with the right to privacy. And there's things that you can do to protect the privacy of your children and also ensure that they're not going to become victims of crime.
Right. That's a discussion, a general discussion. Brandon, we have on a pretty regular basis at the AG's office with Bill and I participating in it because again, I quote from Bill: the most dangerous thing you can put in your child's hands is a cell phone. Mm-hmm. I mean, when you think of the computing power, when you think of what that phone connects them to today compared to when we were growing up, when we didn't even have those, we got on our bike, mm-hmm. and the only reason we knew to come home was because the street light was on, right?
Yeah.
And but so we would highly encourage people out there. to go to our website. We got a lot of great things on the website at agjefflandry.com. You can download, Be Smart with your smartphone. We've got schools coming up. We've got our students' rights on religious liberty handbook that's out there as well. But really and truly, parents should really take an opportunity to look at that. I know that Apple has unveiled a lot of privacy settings. We're actually working with them in trying to get that information out as well. And whether it's with your smartphone, on social media, we try to put out some real good tips for parents in protecting their kids in today's, cyber world.
Yeah, we always hear this thing, don't be a victim. I got two children, my daughter's in college. I give her tips about how to walk out to her vehicle when she leaves Walmart or wherever she's shopping. You could choose not to be a victim because there's things that you can do to protect yourself. This booklet that we put out, I think, goes a long way to helping parents help themselves and their children not become victims.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, you're right. I mean, being proactive is absolutely the way to protect your child. And of course, again, we put the manual out there because a lot of people, sometimes you're just unsure. I mean, the technology changes so fast. The social platforms change so fast. So we try to stay up there with it. One of the other things I want to talk about was that Mick mentioned, because I think he struck a nerve with us. I didn't even know that. I'm going to have to tell Mick. I can't believe he waited to unveil the fact that they're retooling or reorganizing the Army Corps of Engineers on the Moon Griffon show, Brand. I mean, that's like a big thing to us.
Huge thing.
Yeah, I mean, when you were in Congress and I was working the district as your district director, I mean, from parish presidents to local governments to private industry, I mean, the biggest issue we always had was problems with permitting and dealing with the Corps of Engineers. I mean, nobody has done more to slow the growth of economic activity in the state of Louisiana than the Corps of Engineers. And people don't realize local governments have to pay for mitigation when they're doing governmental projects. So, the parish of Lafayette or St. Martin or Iberia where I'm at, if we want to build a road, if we want to do drainage projects to protect us from flooding, we've had all this devastating flooding.
Floods, right.
There's a reason why parishes don't clean out drainage canals is because the cost to mitigate these quote unquote wetlands is cost prohibitive. I mean, can you imagine that you can have a canal that was actually dug by a parish originally? Okay, a canal dug by the parish that can be later determined to be a wetland by the Corps of Engineers. A canal within a servitude given to the parish or the state that was created by the parish or the state can now turn into a wetland, and some parishes have to mitigate those costs when they go to clean those ditches out at $40,000, $50,000, $70,000 an acre. It's outrageous.
It's regulated by the federal government, it's absolutely ridiculous. Of course, that's some of the things that Scott Pruitt pushed back on. Right? It's some of the things that frustrate us because you're right. I mean, the devastating floods we had 2 years ago always said, the record-breaking crest of Vermilion, but what is the carrying capacity of our bayous, rivers, and streams today? I mean, I can remember back in the day when we did a lot of dredging. But of course, you don't see those dredges working anymore because of the permitting process and the mitigation, of course. And we involved in one of those suits.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we were absolutely positively committed to is that the Obama administration came in and redefined what was called waters of the United States and expanded what was considered under the jurisdiction of the Corps of Engineers, basically to the extent that, the ditch in your front yard at this point in time under that particular rule it would be considered waters of the U.S.
Just think, Bill.
You probably have to get a permit to go shovel the
I was about to think about it. I remember back in the day, my dad, go clean that ditch, boy. I'd have to tell him, Dad, you got your permit?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's probably helping some kids out a lot.
Yeah,
but we involved in that lawsuit, and I think we're gonna be successful in rolling back that rule, which again is going to relieve commerce and industry in Louisiana and public bodies to a large extent. So
it certainly help our farmers as well. I want to give a shout out to all our farmers out there to help secure and feed this country.
And the last thing I think you need to talk about is opioids, because you've done such a great job at putting together programs to help combat what most folks view as one of the biggest threats to health in the United States of America.
Yeah, look, we have done real well and worked real hard. Our staff has been great. I'll give a shout out to Monica Taylor, who works in our office and is in charge of putting some of these crazy ideas that we have into play.
She's been great.
She's done a great job. We partnered with Blue Cross Blue Shield to have a drug prescription take-back box, one in every parish. Sheriff Garber has one here in Lafayette as well. Where we are here today, I know up in Bossier and Caddo, they have them. We did one up in Washita.
We just did one in St. Helena Parish.
That's correct. That's correct. So all around Louisiana. And we encourage people to go out and clean out their medicine cabinets. And then, of course, just through having lunch one day with Keith Myers over at LHC and recognize that the hospice programs, that hospice nurses were having a problem helping families dispose of opioids. And we put out that program, partnered with Mallinckrodt Pharmaceuticals and hospices around, the state. And now those hospice nurses can help families after their loved one passes, to get those opioids out of the house, which takes them eventually off the street. Because 60%, listen to this, Brandon, 60% of people who get addicted to opioids start off using someone else's prescription. So we believe here at the Department of Justice, working for you, that the best way is to be proactive and get those drugs off the street so we don't create other addicts. Look, again, I want to thank all the listeners out there for putting up and tolerating Bill Stiles joining me today in the studio and myself. And of course, we ask everyone to follow us on our Twitter at AG Jeff Landry. And of course, like us on Facebook. Thank you again. We appreciate it. Love you, Louisiana. And, who knows? Moon might take another vacation 40 years out and give us another opportunity to mess this up. Thank you.